Welcome to The Explainer. You know, it's really easy to get lost in the daily news cycle, but have you ever wondered what actually happens in Washington during just one standard fly-under-the-radar week? Well, today, we're cutting through the noise. We're looking straight at a massive stack of official White House releases from May 2026. By tracking the actual paper trail, we're talking the executive orders, the signed bills, the official nominations. We get this incredibly raw, unfiltered look at the administration's exact priorities, and more importantly, how they're attempting to shape the country.
So here's our roadmap for the week. We're going to cover families and foster care, law enforcement and crime, infrastructure and energy, then executive and judicial nominations, and we'll wrap up with commemorating American history.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Families in Foster Care, and look at their stated policy goals. Now, a really major highlight from this week is a very specific number, $32 million. That's the amount earmarked for the Fostering the Future Fund. Think about it. When older youth age out of the foster care system, they often face this sudden, pretty terrifying cliff without any real safety net. So, what the administration is doing here is officially reallocating unused federal funds from the 2027 budget, and this money is specifically targeted to support these young adults right during that incredibly vulnerable transition period. And what's fascinating is how many moving parts there are here. It's actually kind of rare to see this many different federal agencies moving in total lockstep. We're seeing HUD secure $30 million for housing vouchers, which they note is actively helping over 1,400 foster youth nationwide. On top of that, we're seeing 21 states being pressured into protecting Social Security survivor benefits for kids in care. They've even pushed the Office of Personnel Management to issue brand new paid leave guidance for federal workers who choose to foster or adopt. It's a massive multi-agency push. But as we all know, policy is really only half the battle, right? The other half is messaging. To amplify these family initiatives, the administration is leaning heavily on recent press coverage. Just look at how they're framing the launch of moms.gov and their new push for employer-provided fertility benefits. They are aggressively taking these media headlines and using them to cement these actions as major, tangible wins for their broader economic and social agenda. It's all about controlling the narrative. Okay, moving on to Section 2. Let's look at law enforcement and crime, and specifically, their stated directives. So this messaging came out during National Police Week, and honestly, it leaves absolutely zero room for ambiguity. They have officially directed the Department of Justice to aggressively seek the death penalty for anyone who murders a police officer. It's a highly definitive, hardline mandate explicitly meant to project a zero-tolerance stance when it comes to law enforcement protection. And beyond the strong rhetoric, we are seeing concrete structural policy shifts rolling out. They are officially halting federal support for cashless bail systems. They're also actively restoring burn JAG and COPS grants to funnel money back to local precincts. At the exact same time, they've instructed the DOJ to drop certain anti-police lawsuits and DEI mandates, and they're once again allowing local police departments to equip themselves with surplus military gear. These are real, on-the-ground changes to how policing operates. And here is the specific metric they are using to justify all of those major policy reversals: 125 years. The administration is officially taking credit for the U.S. murder rate plummeting to a 125-year low in 2025. Now, whether sociologists agree on the exact causal link or not, that's almost beside the point for the messaging. The White House is making this historic drop the absolute cornerstone of their public safety victory lap.
All right, let's pivot to Section 3, Infrastructure and Energy Bills signed.
Now, executive orders are one thing. They dictate how agencies behave. But on May 11th, the president signed actual, binding laws passed by Congress. And the contrast between these two bills is just fascinating. On one side, you have Senate Bill 98, which forces the FCC to crack down and strictly vet companies applying for high-cost funding to build out rural broadband. But then, on the exact same day, Senate Bill 1020 is signed, handing the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission the power to grant massive 6-year construction extensions for hydropower projects. So telecom regulations tighten up, while energy regulations loosen, all altered in a single afternoon.
Next up, Section 4. Let's dig into executive and judicial nominations.
You know, a president's longest-lasting legacy is almost always the judiciary, and this week we saw a massive wave of nominations sent over to the Senate, stretching everywhere from the Southern District of Texas all the way up to the 8th Circuit. Because these are lifetime appointments, this is literally the administration planting seeds. These specific judges will be the ones interpreting federal law for decades after this administration actually leaves office. It's a huge shift in the long-term legal landscape.
When you look at the executive slate, you see this really fascinating split strategy. On the one hand, you've got high-profile, very recognizable political figures being rewarded with diplomatic posts. We're talking Carrie Lake tapped for ambassador to Jamaica and Douglas Mastriano for the Slovak Republic. But quietly, right alongside them, they're filling the vital, heavy-lifting bureaucratic roles. They're handing the reins of FEMA to Cameron Hamilton and putting Francis Brooke in as the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. So it's a mix of big, flashy names and crucial administrative operators.
And then there's some sudden bureaucratic maneuvering happening in real time. In a simultaneous move, the White House officially withdrew Casey Means for Surgeon General and, in the exact same Senate transmittal, pivoted to nominate Nicole Safier for the 4-year term instead. It's a really interesting glimpse into the fast-paced, behind-the-scenes political calculus of Senate confirmations. Things can change in a heartbeat.
Finally, Section 5. Let's look at how they are commemorating American history, specifically looking at Fort Ticonderoga.
So, as the nation approaches its 250th anniversary, the White House is actively using its official channels to curate American history. They released a highly detailed message honoring the Green Mountain Boys' capture of Fort Ticonderoga. By celebrating a small band of militiamen stunning the most powerful military in the world, they are very intentionally attempting to intertwine their modern political messaging with classic themes of American rebellion and exceptionalism.
And the history itself is genuinely cinematic, right? Back in May 1775, Patriots managed to seize Fort Ticonderoga while the British garrison was literally asleep. Not a single shot was fired. And this one stealth mission allowed Colonel Henry Knox to drag all those captured cannons through the freezing winter all the way to Boston, which eventually forced the British to retreat. It's a stark reminder of exactly how the executive branch leverages our founding myths to foster a specific national identity.
So we've unpacked a massive week. We're talking sweeping directives on crime, millions of dollars rerouted for foster care, lifetime judges appointed, and historical myths heavily reinforced. The paper trail tells a very clear story of exactly what this administration wants to do. But here is the question you really should be asking yourself. How much of this executive ink will actually survive the bruising friction of a divided Senate, backlogged courts, and the frankly messy reality of real-world implementation? Because saying it is one thing, doing it is another. We'll definitely have to watch closely. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.